Our still image will last as long as the timeline indicates here. So by default it's 5 seconds. We'll just leave that as it is, and you can add a title over the top or whatever you want to do. But I'm going to show you how you can actually make the introduction of other pictures really easy. The temptation would be just to drag it onto the timeline like this, let that image play, and then switch to the next one, which is pretty boring. So what you can do is you can use layers. So I'm just going to stagger this so we can see, I'm going to be looking at this picture here, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, that's 4 seconds. And I think what I want to happen is I might want my next picture to appear in 4 seconds. And we can see here it's appeared over the top. We can do all kinds of things now. So if we come back to adjustment and come back to video, I think that might be a good idea. We'll do it with video. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to scale it, and I'm going to add a keyframe, and that's the keyframe is really important. That's that little square over in the corner here. I'm going to add a keyframe and I'm going to scale it, and I want this picture to start over here, and I want it to grow over the top of the other picture. So I also want to keyframe the position. And by the time I get to the end of this picture here, so I'm going to start about here, I'm going to add another keyframe for scale and another keyframe for position. So I'm going to scale, and it's going to scale around the center. So I'm going to scale it and put it there like that, and that should work. So let's have a look how that works now. So the position should be, let's go, and that's what my transition will look like. And if you want to make it quicker, you just shorten the time. So let's just zoom into this. As a look at this, we can adjust over here and just zoom into our timeline, and we can see my keyframe. There's my first keyframe and there's my second keyframe. But if we think that's too slow, that's going to take 25-30 frames, it's going to take a second. We could snap it back to here and just drag it back and see what that looks like and play that in real time. So there's, look at this, there we go, that's quite cool. And at the same time, what you can do is you can put a keyframe on this object here. So we might just do this as scale. So I'm going to start here with this object, make sure that the highlighted layer is got a white border around it. I'm going to keyframe for my scale, and by the time I've got this happening, I'm going to get to, where's my other keyframe here, and I'm going to put another keyframe in, and this time I'm going to scale it down to 1%. So we should now see one picture transitioning and the other one growing. There we go. So we've now got a bit of a scaling thing happening with our picture there. We can get quite creative with keyframes. So what I want now is I want this CapCut to be pushed out of the bottom of the frame by the next slide coming in. So let's put the TUI in. I'm going to put the TUI in here. It's exactly where I want it to be, but I want its starting position to be out of the top of the screen. So I'm going to slide it all the way up to here, just push it all the way out. There we go. And I'm going to have a keyframe position, but I'm also going to have a keyframe position here as well for the CapCut. And then I'm going to push this to here, and I'm going to have another keyframe, and the CapCut is going to be pushed out. So it's going to be pushed out by the TUI, and I'm going to put another position keyframe here and slide that in. And what that will look like is this. So we can do this, and we can make that shorter if we wanted to, and just make sure we line up the keyframes when we do that. But we can make this have weight. So let's just zoom in a little bit, and we can just zoom in. And what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to change the keyframe here, and I'm just going to push it down a little bit, and then I'm going to scroll along the timeline a little bit, and I'm going to add another keyframe, and I'm going to move it up a little bit, make it look like it's bounced. So just move along the keyframe a bit more and add another keyframe for position and bounce it down again, and finally, let's add another position keyframe and bounce it up a little bit. And then finally, let's make it rest in position. There. Now let's see what that looks like. Makes it look like it bounced. And if you think that's too quick, you can just stretch those keyframes out. In fact, it might be just a little bit too quick. So let's just bounce that out. Let's just stretch that out a little bit. Just drag those keyframes along the timeline, and you can just fiddle with that. So let's see what that looks like. That looks a bit better. And again, you can even those out. Yeah, that might be better again. I've added the South Island Robin to the fourth layer of my slideshow here, and you can see that I've scaled it down to 1% as my keyframe. So I'm going to make that as a keyframe now, and at the same time I'm going to put a keyframe, scale keyframe in here for the TUI, and that's at 100%. And what I'm going to do is we're going to do a swap. I'm going to do that quite quickly. So I'm going to make a scale keyframe for the TUI, and I'm going to make that 1%. And I'm going to, on this one up here, I'm going to put a keyframe in here, and I'm going to scale this up into place like that. And so let's have a look at that. What does that look like? And they can transition between each other. And just by using the scale and position and rotate, and using a combination of keyframes, you can make your slideshow much more interesting. And obviously you'd need to add audio and you'd need to add text, all of which you can find out how to do that on my other CapCut videos.